So looking at vitamins and minerals, it's a good idea to separate them into two types. The water-soluble ones can't be stored, so you have to make sure that you get them on a daily basis. But on the other hand, if you take too many of them, you just lose more of them in your urine and sweat than otherwise. But the water-insoluble ones, though, get stored with fat, and they get released with fat as well afterwards. So if you're taking a supplement, you can easily take far too much, and everything that's extra, that's in excess, gets added to your fat storage, and this can really lead to a dangerous, unhealthy state, and one that stays with you for quite a while after you stop taking those vitamins. So in general, try to focus on balance and avoid extremes. If your diet is healthy and you have a lot of greens and a wide variety of vegetables and fruit in your daily diet, then you shouldn't need to take vitamins, and you probably should avoid them. But on the other hand, if you're in a rush and your meal is lacking in micronutrients, then consider taking one a day. One thing to keep in mind, though, is to take it with food, but also to be careful, because if you're counting on the one a day to have everything you need, we need more calcium than can fit in that little pill, so the one a days never have enough calcium, so you should take some calcium in addition to the one a day. And finally, if you want, you can optimize a little bit and split them in half, perhaps, but I'm not sure that makes a big difference. With water, again, it's a question of balance and moderation. If you drink far too much water, you can die. This is something that happens only really at raves, people who are taking a lot of drugs, and even then, very, very rarely. I think I read about this once a year, maybe. But much more common is the question of what happens when you drink too much water. You have to be aware of the fact that in your urine, you're always losing electrolytes. You're losing those water-soluble vitamins and minerals. And so with women, where it's already difficult enough to get a sufficient amount of calcium in the diet, drinking too much water aggravates that. And apparently it's to the point where it's fairly common for women in their 30s to be developing severe cases of osteoporosis, where their bones are brittle and they're breaking their bones doing regular activities. So as a guideline, you should be aiming for light yellow urine. If the urine is clear, then there's no urea, and urea is a normal byproduct of the metabolism of proteins, and so you'll always have some urea that needs to be evacuated during the day. If you're going to the bathroom more than that, then you're drinking too much water, or you're taking diuretics. And so this is one aspect that is important, where caffeine, for example, is a diuretic. It's a compound that we're not able to break down ourselves, and the way that we evacuate it is through urine. And so when there's caffeine in the body, we'll get rid of water and electrolytes more than we would otherwise, and get rid of the caffeine. And so one of the issues with caffeine is that since a lot of people drink their caffeine, if you take caffeine and there's too much in the body, you end up going to the bathroom, getting rid of water, being underhydrated, being thirsty, and then drinking more caffeine, and then having to lose more caffeine. And so if you're taking a lot of caffeine, you're spending your whole day underhydrated, and you're leaching electrolytes in a significant fashion. So although caffeine does raise your metabolic rate and perhaps helps a little bit with weight loss, it's definitely not a healthy way to diet, and it should be avoided. So if you're looking to optimize, overnight you do lose a lot of water, and so in the morning it's not a bad idea to drink a couple glasses of water, perhaps. But in general, though, try to aim for moderation in just about everything with the diet. I'll mention alcohol in passing. It's not, I guess, a true nutrient, but it's obviously part of many people's diet. First off, if you drink a lot, I would strongly encourage you to take vitamin supplements. The reason being that most alcohol has a fair amount of sugar with it, and overall, the alcohol and the sugar have a lot of calories, and so most heavy drinkers don't eat enough, and therefore, from the sugar that they get, they can make non-essential amino acids and fat, but obviously they don't get the other nutrients. So take vitamin supplements and try to make sure that you get some protein or some source of those amino acids. Um, so if you're looking to lose weight or if you're having weight control problems, consider the amount, take a look. Like, for example, I did a quick Google search and found this low carbs diet.about.com that had the list of, how many carbs are in each type of drink. And the range is really, really wide. It goes from maybe 2.5 or 4 grams of carbs to 20 for the girly cocktails. And a lot of beer has 12 grams, for example, or even more, I think. So if you're taking a drink that has 20 grams of sugar, all that sugar again is turning to fat, and that's why you're putting on weight. So try to switch to a different drink if you can. Build a habit. If you're used to drinking a certain something, when you switch to something else, it can be a surprisingly easy thing, as actually I'll be discussing in a little bit. But some alternatives. Wine is is good, especially red wine. Definitely has some beneficial side effects, some beneficial effects from parts of it that aren't alcohol or sugar, but wine is a lot stronger than beer, for example. And I think that wine by itself is something that should be drank with with food. And so if you're having a drink on an empty stomach, a lot of people, I think, have trouble with wine and maybe get slight headaches and so on. If you dilute your wine with club soda and make a spritzer, you'll find that it's actually a really nice drink. And carbonation makes just about everything taste good, but it brings the wine back to an alcohol content for the amount of water that's closer to beer, and it makes it a nice light drink. Vodka and club soda is another low carb drink. But if you switch to a low sugar alcohol, keep in mind though that you're getting much fewer calories than before, and therefore your evening is going to feel different if all of a sudden you're hungry during the evening when before you weren't, obviously from getting so much sugar. So if you switch to a low sugar alcohol, then add a little bit of food, or you're going to get hungry. And indeed, if you have a little bit of food with your drink, you'll probably feel a little bit better or be a bit healthier in any case. Okay, so we've made it through the first part. Hopefully you didn't find it too difficult or too boring. Now we're going to start looking at how to bring all this stuff together to make a diet that's more effective. So the first thing is, let's think about a new term, maybe in English, or a term that I'm taking from French. For decades now, for quite a while, people have been talking in French, at least, about slow and fast sugar. It's a direct translation. And so the question is not, it's the same sugar, whether it's glucose is, you can eat something that's got glucose, but that's a fast sugar, or it can have the same glucose, but it could be a slow sugar. The difference of the question is how quickly it's getting into the bloodstream. So obviously, I hope this makes sense, based on what we've been looking at, how if your blood sugar gets too high, all that sugar turns to fat, and you end up with a much stronger low afterwards. So that's why it's important to try to focus on finding sources of nutrients that give slow sugar, right? Where the digestion and the release of the nutrients into the bloodstream is much, much slower. So what are the strategies we're going to follow for this? On the one hand, we're going to look at the glycemic index. We're also going to look at how fat can affect the digestion of sugar, and we're going to be splitting meals rather than having only 2 or 3 meals a day. It should be pretty obvious that if you have a few snacks in the middle, that can help really keep your blood sugars out of that low range that can be problematic.